Hello and welcome back to Goswick Lane, Big Head Real Estate. We talk about real estate, all the things that are involved in real estate, investing, purchasing, buying, from the seller's perspective, the buyer's perspective, from the realtor's perspective, from the inspection guy's perspective. I said that word way too many times. It really tripped me up there. Jimmy Sue is back with us, Longview Home Inspections. And as we left off last time, Jimmy's got some pretty cool little stories to tell. And I asked him, is there ever been a disaster moment during an inspection? And he said, yeah. And so we're going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, we've had countless, but I think one of the funnier ones that we were talking about is we inspect rain or sunshine. We've inspected through snowstorms, and this one particular inspection was out in the country. It's pouring rain, cats and dogs, and we're doing a septic system inspection, so we're doing our darndest to locate where the leach field is. And that's a great question, I think, also, is, well, how do you inspect a septic system? Because when we're looking for signs of failure, we're looking for any effluent that might be coming to the surface. We're looking for things that are more obvious backups, things like that. But when it's raining specifically, or when we're doing a conventional system, we'll drop dye tablets during that volume test we were talking about and that extensive amount of water we run. And
you'll drop dye tablets so that you can see if that water's
Correct.
coming up. Okay,
Correct.
It's like a green. What color is it?
Usually purple or blue.
So it's very. Is it very noticeable if it is coming up?
Yes.
Okay.
It can be. Now, usually it's you got gurgling water and it's that obvious. But when you have puddles of water everywhere due to the rain, this is where we were just kind of going the extra mile. And like I said, it's pouring down, but we're already soaked. And so, fortunately, it wasn't actually me. It's my assistant, and he's walking out, and he found the septic system.
Okay.
When he fell waist deep into it.
Oh my gosh.
Just soaked to the chest, just fell straight in, and so
no lid,
no lid, no nothing.
What were the findings of how was the septic tank?
Oh man,
full?
you never know what's in a septic tank, bro.
There is so much water, it's so diluted. Thankfully, I think it was just more gross. He laughed it off. We laughed. Got him a change of clothes. Luckily, we were at the end of the inspection. But yeah, that one's kind of.
Wait, you made him keep working?
Yeah, we had a job to do. We had to finish. Of course.
I ain't take you home. No, you smell like poo, but we're gonna finish this job.
I made him sit in the truck bed while I finished the job. No, I'm just kidding.
He drove home in the rain. He was in the back of the truck. My father-in-law, so our neighbors, actually the house that I live in now, the guy that built that house, his wife somehow accidentally flushed her wedding ring down the toilet. And my father-in-law was such a good friend that he got in the septic with his buddy and helped dig out that wedding ring.
Did they find it?
They did find it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he said it was disgusting. Nasty.
Yeah, I don't know that I could do that. I was going to ask Jimmy, what is probably the biggest square footage home that you've ever inspected?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So outside of commercial, which, have been in the tens of thousands, we've done quite a few buildings. Actual single-family home, I think about 6,600 square foot. Main residence would take the cake, but there's always add-ons, so there's going to be things like pools, sprinkler systems. I think we've done a few ranches where there's multiple houses, so that was 16-hour day. There's three main houses, probably like 5 outbuilding barns, like 2 or 3 septic systems, wells to look at. That was probably the biggest single.
Is it a two-person? Is your inspection a two-person gig?
Yeah, so most inspectors are usually solopreneurships. A lot do run an apprentice or assistant. I just find we're able to make much better findings having 2 sets of eyes. So, like, one of the things is when we run a volume test, typically on a pier and beam, there's going to be a little drip or leak most of the times at a fitting. It's not a huge deal, but it's still a leak. That's a 4-letter word. And so I can't really leave water running and then jump underneath the house and crawl for risk of, something backed up or I can't accidentally flood the house. It's something I just can't do. But running 2-man, one person just babysits the faucets and just keeps ping-ponging back, flushing toilets repeatedly, and another team member can actually get underneath the structure and crawl it and make some findings that we couldn't otherwise. And speaking of, before we came back on, I was talking with Janty, and I remember one of the specific cases where it was a large estate, and this has been some years ago, and we did have issues backing up. It didn't manifest till about 15 minutes into the inspection, but I literally started to have water come out from one of the walls, so I knew there was most likely a breakage in the plumbing line. So we recommended further evaluation.
Well, and that gives me the opportunity to go in and, a part of real estate and being a buyer's agent or a seller's agent is the representation that you give them. And a lot of people that know me know that I'll push as far as I can push.
But you play that game on both sides, though, right? You have to if you're representing the seller or
buyer,
right?
If I'm representing the listing agent and the buyer's agent brings me this problem, then you try to play it down, or use as many of my contacts as possible to find someone to remedy the situation. But the name of the game is to, represent your client in the best way and get them the best deal that you can get them. And so sometimes that means that, when you have things like that, you can, I call backing up if you're working for the buyer, backing up the seller by tens, thousands, 5,000. It could be, significantly more. It just depends on what the seller's what they have to give out.
So on that specific instance, do you remember the dollar amount of what it came down to, or the repair, or what was concessions that were given on the contract?
Sure. So sometimes I do follow up, and I remember on this specific case, I checked back in with Janty, and he told me just on the sewer scope and the discovery they made there, not including other things they had negotiated, I think he told me it was in the neighborhood of $30,000.
That's a big deal if you're not expecting that. If you don't get an inspection.
And that's the big problem with it. I have to tell everybody, and everybody signs a piece of paper. I have to recommend that you get a survey. A home inspection and a survey. But it's your choice to get it. It's my recommendation that you get it, because you never know what's going to come up. We haven't talked about termites. They do termite treatments and inspections. And so there's a lot of things that go into it: sprinklers, outbuildings, pools, so many things that can come up that you don't think about. And one other thing I always tell my clients, termites aren't a huge deal. We're in East Texas. We got water. We got bark mulch in our beds. But it can be if it's not treated. So I don't know exactly how Jimmy conveys that to his clients, which is my clients at the time, but that's kind of how I put it to them.
And this is stepping back and talking about education. Is really, as far as East Texas, I've heard this saying before, and I like to repeat this. There's 3 types of houses in regards to termites. There's houses that are going to have termites. There's houses that actively have termites, and there's houses that have had termites. Now, obviously, if they're hidden behind the wall, or when we're talking about that plumbing find, that's not a typical finding or expectation you should have on your inspector. But we were able to net and save that particular client and buyer $30,000 on a costly repair that they would have found post inspection, and they may still have. It's just we happened to catch it that day. I'm not saying that we're going to be able to catch all termites, because obviously deficiencies hidden behind walls or things like that. But I have gotten numerous clients termite treatments, and that may be in the range of $1,500, $1,000, maybe just be a couple $100 for a spot treatment. And so as you kind of create some of the value on what an inspection is or isn't, as we talked about in the previous episode, is also just kind of creating value, because there is an expense associated. Buying a house is expensive. You have surveyors, you have appraisals, you have down payments, and there's a lot of things happening very quickly. And the inspection is technically, it's an optional thing. You're not required to have one. Now, I would strongly advise, even not trying to be biased, is
so banks don't require, if you're getting a bank loan, they don't require an inspection?
Not. There are a few specific lenders that may require a termite inspection. WDI, as we call it in the industry, VA loans do. But typically the lender does not require that.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's definitely something you have discretion to do. I've had clients on really new constructions or properties in really good shape Just thank me so much. I think the worst nightmare story I had on a new construction or spec home is it was a new builder. His dad, he was generational, and during my volume test at both bathrooms, it started flooding from underneath the wall.
Ouch.
It had been tiled, everything. It was gorgeous, except the
Wasn't
plumber,
plumbed right.
a connection was missing.
I've actually had that happen on one of the properties, not during
Yeah.
an inspection, but plumber didn't glue some joints, and cut out concrete to
Yep.
do it, and so we had to go in and fix it before the house was built.
And that's not the first time I found leaks on new constructions. It's actually happened multiple times, and it's not that may not get fixed by the builder, especially if they're reputable. It's a matter of hunting them down after you've paid for it and you own it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having them make good on that warranty, and then also the extent of having your bathroom have to get torn up, retiled, re-sheetrock, things like that.
That's expensive.
Yeah, that same house ended up having a gas leak at the furnace. And
Plumber just wasn't good.
no, man. Well, that one we can probably put on the HVAC guy, and then
Okay.
also the electrician. We'll just throw them under the bus too, because 5 feet from the gas leak, we had exposed electrical wires coming out of a junction box.
This was outside the city limits.
I'm pretty sure when I got there, they were still hooking up the septic system. They literally plugged in the thermostat for me so I could run the AC, and so they were
Okay.
scrambling. But it showed, and I'm not trying to discount new constructions or discount anyone else. It's just you'd never know.
You don't, and there are, there's a lot of great builders around here, a lot.
Well,
And-
those contractors depend on their subcontractors,
Yes.
and they're not on the job 24 hours a day.
That's correct.
That's the issue, and it
That's
makes
correct.
them look bad.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and so it's just one of those things. Even being an investor, when I'm running a flip or doing a rental project, there's been times I've gone behind them and just huge embarrassment, pie in face moments, and just like,
Mhm.
oh gosh, we got to get this taken care of.
Yes.
But I think one of the questions that viewers may have is the cost.
Yes, I was going to ask you,
sure.
when you talk about value and you don't have to do it, well, what am I comparing value to? What is the typical inspection cost?
So typical can range anywhere from several hundred to, usually it's typically several hundred. My base fee starts at $350,
Okay.
but my average inspection typically is closer to $550 mark, and that's
Okay.
due to adding the termite inspection, which usually runs about 125 thereabouts. Then we have maybe additional add-on services such as septics or pools or any out structures, things like that, are all considered optional systems. Some inspectors will package those things. Some will charge additional fees for getting underneath in the crawl space. So, looking at roughly a couple hundred to several hundred, also depending on the square footage of the property.
Okay.
One thing that I will say is, especially if you have a good realtor or good agent that is aggressive in negotiation and is knowledgeable, typically there's going to be enough ammunition in that inspection report that majority of my clients will get at least their inspection feedback, even if that's just, hey, you know what, we need to get this serviced, or hey, the microwave doesn't work, and just that appliance, the cost for that. Because once you sign that dotted line, it's as is typically. The Trek standard, you own it. Regardless of whatever problems happen, there's not a warranty. The exception is on a new construction. There's typically a 12-month builder warranty, but that is an exception.
Yeah, you lose negotiating power when those lines are signed and that money exchanges hands.
Oh, absolutely.
Typically.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of the things, is just really wanting to have people understand also that you do have room to potentially have a second negotiation phase and have some issues fixed, and just having that expectation that no house is perfect. I think that's part of home ownership. Is the proverbial.
Stuff
Well,
happens.
you're
Stuff's
either
gonna happen.
doing that or you're going to rent. So, you own your home and you pay for the repairs. You have the asset, you gain the equity, or you rent. You don't have the asset, you don't have the equity, but you don't have the maintenance side of it. And like you said, 100%. This is pretty much what you said. What I tell my clients, it's going to cost you $500. Let's just say, give or take some.
Sure.
You can get $500 back in
Absolutely.
findings,
And also
at least
that whatever that inspection costs, that's rolled into closing, right?
It can be, oftentimes. Now, a lot of times it's paid up front the day
Okay.
of. Because here's what's interesting is they may take that information, and it may be, I had a buyer just not too long ago, Lake of the Pines. She was elderly, and she didn't want any headaches, any problems. We had headaches and problems, and within probably 10, 30 minutes of talking to her, she said, I prayed today. I needed to know if I'm moving forward with this or not. And we knew pretty quickly before she even got the inspection report, it wasn't a fit for her. She had mobility issues. It was a gravel driveway. She was having trouble just getting into the property. And she thanked me. She said, that's the best. On that one, she said, that was the best $600 I've spent.
Okay.
To know that I'm not going to be spending $220,000 on something I don't want.
Yeah.
And we started to see things, floor slopes, settlement, movement indicators, that she didn't see the first time, and just having this different view. And so sometimes spending that money is a binary yes or no. Do I want to move forward? Now, hopefully most times we want to keep the deal alive if you can. My job, I'm more impartial. I'm just going to find and report deficiencies. But, if you have a good agent that can guide you through a lot of those things, as we're talking about, there's going to be deficiencies. There's going to be settlement. Welcome to East Texas.
Yes, it's going to happen.
Well, and one last thing before we cap it, the biggest thing that I tell my clients, and I tell Jimmy, Jimmy may call me sometimes and be like, hey, man, I'm going to give you a recap. The recap is not good. Hey, it is what it is. I don't want to sell my clients junk. And so that's what I tell them. Look,
unless you pay for junk.
Well, yeah, if you're paying, if you're an investor, but if you're a buyer, first time, second time, third time, whatever, I want the buyer to get what they want. And if I don't think it's something that I can sell for them again easily and excited, I don't want them to buy it either.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
All right, so save yourselves on the front side and don't kill yourselves on the back side. Longview Home Inspections. You can't expect what you don't inspect. Thanks for joining us today, Jimmy.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
we appreciate you. Appreciate y'all being here. Remember, hit those buttons at the bottom. Help us reach more people. If this is valuable content for you and you think somebody else needs to listen to it, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. We appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Remember, love God, love others, and let your work reflect that. We'll catch you on the next one.